Hey guys, back again. Sorry I didn't actually put up a review of the Southampton game, but that was because I was away in Manchester seeing some family members, and to be honest, that was much more interesting than watching the game anyway. So, because of course it's Sunderland, we don't do actually wins. But anyway, no, I mean, I'm not going to talk much about the game because it's way too late for that now, but what I would say is, you know, Southampton had a lot of the game, had a lot of the play. Would they have won if it wouldn't have been for the penalty? I don't know, because from what I heard, and bear in mind this is just what I've heard, first 15, 20 minutes they were all over us, and then we sort of stabilised and neutralised the game, and then it looked relatively comfortable. All I can say is I would kill Jan and Villa for doing that, making that challenge when he didn't need to, because that could have cost us a point, and even Sam Allardyce said after the game. But the game got me thinking about how the state of Sunderland at the moment is just ridiculously depressing. And I've been thinking this to myself, and I've even spoke to a few friends about it. And I feel like I'm just going to get it off my chest now. I don't know when this is the relevant time to put it on there. Well, actually, it kind of is, because two sides, our last opponent and our next opponent, both are going to be relevant in this. Southampton and, of course, Crystal Palace. What I would say is, well, first of all, by the way, on a quickly unrelated note, rest in peace to those, by the way, who died in the Paris attacks. They are vicious human beings who seem to have no respect for human life. And hopefully the tragedies were kept down to a minimum. But let's just leave the friends and family of those who died to grieve in peace. It's the best way I can say to go about it. And I really like the England-France touch, by the way, before the game. So, well done for that. Anyway, back onto Sunderland, though. It got me thinking about the state of Sunderland and how it's depressing. I mean, I've said this quite a couple of times on previous videos, but it is honestly depressing because for me, there's so much potential there to do better. There's so much potential there to not be, quite frankly, where we should have stopped being about at least 2-3 seasons ago. Because think back to when we first came up. Just bear with a minute. Okay. When we first came back up in 2007, obviously the objective then would have been to stay in the Premier League. That's fair enough. You can take that and understand that. We had Roy Keane the first season, and then he left. Was it about a third of the way into the 2008-09 season? And then afterwards, he had Ricky Sabrasia. I know I've probably pronounced that wrong, but anyway, you know who I mean. And he got us just over the relegation line to safety when Newcastle went down. Sorry to any Newcastle fans watching this. Then afterwards, you got Steve Bruce, who moved us on from being relegation contenders over and over and over again to then actually getting mid-table. Finished 13th that year, 9-10. And then the year afterwards, we had Bruce again. And the first half of that season, bar the horrendous 5-1 defeat, other than that, the first half of that season, under Bruce in 10-11, was fantastic when you had Bent, Jan, Welbeck, Zenden, Henderson, Fraser Campbell, although he didn't really feature that much. But there was a lot of good players there, and careless others I forgot to mention. You know, Nina Manoa was all right. And Steve Malbronk, etc. There was a good side there. There was definitely potential there to be a really good top 10 side, which I thought, with that team, you'd expect to get top 10, or at the very least being around the top 10. And Bent left, obviously, did one. And then afterwards, we started falling quicker than jumping out of a parachute in the sky at whatever feet there is. You know, that probably wasn't a very good analogy, but at the same time, you get what I mean. We dropped very quickly after that, where we then suddenly just scraped 10th on the final day of the season. But even so, we weren't really properly in a relegation battle. The next season, Bruce... Now, this is where you start to get the managerial sackings trend. Bruce left. Martin O'Neill came in, finished 13th. Comfortably stayed up. Fine. You'd expect that. And then afterwards, Martin O'Neill's first full season, which really started the trend of underachievement, is what I'd like to call it, where Sunderland had a number of players who were better than the 17th final position at the end of the season showed for me. Subsequently, O'Neill was sacked late on in the season. Don't know what that was. The Italian nutcase that was Paolo Di Canio, although he gave us the first of 6 in a row derby victories, other than that, it was absolutely useless. He clearly was out of his depth. Kept us up that year, though. Then started the next season, got sacked, then Gus Poyet came in. We flirted with relegation for most of the season again. Bottom for about 3/4 of the campaign, if you ask me. Somehow performed a miraculous escape, stayed up, and then last season, Poyet then tried to stabilise us into being a consistent Premier League side, have some level of stability there. He then left near the end of last season. Dick Advocat came in, same formula, saved us. This time, Dick Advocat stayed until about October time, leaves, and then Sam Allardyce comes in. Need I say more? The last 5 seasons, we've been changing managers. Now, surely by this point, the state of Sunderland, if any Sunderland fan thinks it's just the manager, it can't be. When you've had 5 seasons, maybe 1 or 2 at a stretch, but 5 seasons of changing managers, do you not think the problems lie a little bit deeper than that? They have to lie at the board level, or they have to lie with the mentality of the club. And what I mean by mentality is, when I say the players are lazy, this is what I mean, right? Let's take this season, for example. Say, for example, the Norwich and Bournemouth games. These are 2 teams that just came up. Now, Bournemouth were tipped by a lot of people to get relegated, myself included. As long as it doesn't come at Sunderland's expense, I want Bournemouth to stay up. But the way it's going, it looks like it's either going to be one of us that's going to get relegated at this point. Norwich, who had to scrape through to the playoff final, get up via the playoff final. They couldn't even get automatic promotion last season. And the only decent player I can think of that they've got is Redmond. Roddy, maybe. The rest of them I don't really care for. The rest of them don't look that great. You tell me, if Sunderland, who on paper have a better side than both of these clubs, had we give 100% application and been 100% professional in both of those fixtures, would we have lost both of them? Personally, for me, the answer would be no. Because Norwich at home, for example, that is not a game we should be losing. Just period. It's not. We shouldn't be losing to Norwich. Norwich deserved the win on the day. I'm not going to be bitter about that. Norwich deserved the win on the day. And if Sunderland got anything out of that game, it would have been an unfair result because we didn't show up. But that's my point. Why didn't we show up? There's got to be something about the mentality in games like this that worries the heart of the club. Now, maybe what's gone on behind the scenes, I don't know. Maybe that has been talked about behind the scenes, I'm not sure. But at the same time, that's got to be considered. How on earth are we losing to teams like Norwich and Bournemouth? Even go far as last season. Hull. Can you really tell me we had a worse squad than Hull? I don't think so. QPR finished 20th. Aston Villa, take away their 3 best players, they're shit. Palace, got a bit of pace about them. But right, now let's get on to the next point though. And this is what depresses me more than anything else. Since Sunderland have been back in the Premier League, the following sides have come up and overtaken us in terms of both in status in the Premier League and in terms of quality of their first team squads. Stoke City, Swansea, Southampton, Crystal Palace, and now Leicester. Does that not say how embarrassing that is? That they've all, Leicester for me, I still think are massively overachieving, and I don't particularly rate Jamie Vardy as highly. He's had a great season, don't get me wrong, but Stephen Fletcher had a very good start his first year at Sunderland, and he's been crap ever since. But what I would say though is Leicester are overachieving. They won't finish where they are. No disrespect to them, you've had a great season. But anyway, the rest of them though. Stoke, fair enough. They've had Tony Pulis for so many years, and then Mark Hughes has kind of elevated them to the next level up, and then has got them a top 10 side, which is where they should be. And attracting Shaqiri and Boyan, for instance. These are players we should be attracting, really. Then you've got Southampton. Great academy. But they were in the Premier League for much less time than Sunderland. But the difference is they're properly run. The people at Southampton, at the academy, know how to get players into the first team, a pathway from the youth academy into the first team level, and they capitalise on that. They do it really well. So, Crystal Palace. There is no way Palace should be better than Sunderland. There's no way. Now they've been run relatively well. Tony Pulis and Pardew's really helped them and elevate them to the next level. And there's even talks about ownerships and stuff changing on that level at the club. That's great for them. But where's our turn? Since Steve Bruce, we haven't looked like being above just relegation battlers every season. Martin O'Neill, prime example. When he first came into the club, did really well. The end of the 11-12 season, the rest of that season we did all right. We did pretty good. Finished where we should be, really, which is 13th, which mid-table. Fair enough. That's where we should be. The next season, first of all, selling Michael Turner and getting in Carlos Cuellar was a rubbish decision. Straight away, disaster. That should have spelled disaster straight away. But then you had Adam Johnson, Stephen Fletcher. Johnson, who was attracting interest by a lot of clubs, and we got him. Fletcher, goal scorer. Forget what he's been like since his first season. Goal scorer. Other than that, you had McLean, Johnson, Fletcher, Sessegnon, Catamol, Larson and Gardner, who proved they could do a job on their day. I don't think they're as bad as people say they are, by the way. But having said that, he did worse there than what, say, Gus Poyet did last season, and yet Poyet gets more stick. I don't get it. Poyet, for me, did a far better job than Martin O'Neill. But I'm probably in a minority when I say that. Now, having said that, I was quickly on that note. I was listening to a Wise Men Say podcast. Great podcast, by the way, Sunderland fans. I'll put a link in the description below. But they were talking about that season. If Martin O'Neill had stayed, would Sunderland have got the 2 wins that they needed to stay up? Mark McFadden, the editor of A Love Supreme. Editor, please correct me, Martin, if you're watching this. But and then Gareth Barker, one of the regular contributors on the podcast, they had different opinions. Martin felt we would have got the 2 wins. Gareth didn't think we would have. And I agree with Gareth, because under then, we were so underachieving. We didn't look like scoring. We were conceding goals for fun of it. The players clearly weren't given 100%. And you could say Martin O'Neill was having issues with his wife. That's a big issue, fair enough. But then you shouldn't be managing a Premier League club if you've got that on your plate as well. And it clearly showed on the pitch. So, but back to the original point though. Stoke, Swansea, Southampton, Palace and Leicester. They've all stabilised themselves and overtaken us in quality. That is embarrassing. That is how pathetic that is. What we should have done this. Why have we not done this? What goes on at the board level? Look at the board level. You know, key members of the board. What have they got about, other than Lee Congleton, what does the board actually know about football? You know, they're trying to make us a better team commercially and for business partners, fair enough. But don't you think the football side of things should really take precedence over everything else? So why hasn't it? You know, that's the point. And if you want to look at it purely from a business standpoint, make Sunderland as a club, as a team, better on the pitch. Because if you do that, you're going to attract more business investors, or, you know, investors, more business partners. And then you're going to get more money via ticket sales because we're going to be better to watch. I rest my case. You know, and it's annoying me that we don't do this. It's annoying me that we haven't done this, that we haven't, you know, built on anything, which makes me really question what goes on behind the scenes at Sunderland. You know, and that's what I really felt from the Southampton game. Now, Sam Allardyce has been brought in, for example, to make us hard to beat. Now, that's fair enough, given how the many goals that we've decided we want to concede and not bother to defend properly. It's not that we aren't capable of it. We're clearly capable of doing it. We just don't do it. You know, people were complaining about the system against Southampton. But to be fair, a couple of things. One, we already knew that was going to happen when Sam Allardyce came into the club. And two, he's still trying to find the balance between attacking and defending. Because he goes defensively, hasn't worked as much so far. Then you go really all expansive attacking at Everton and get humped 6-2. I know which one I'd rather take. Be defensive if you're getting results. That's not Sam Allardyce's fault. We've got to make sure in January that we're in touching distance of survival. Look, guys, the point is, it upsets me that teams that really shouldn't be better than us, and we've got, you know, they're like the 5 clubs that I've mentioned, we've got bigger stadiums than all of those clubs. I'm not saying our fan base is automatically better, but we've got one of the best fan bases in the world, and yet it's not recognised, it's not rewarded on the pitch, and that's what pisses me off. You know, we've got just as big a fan base as Newcastle, in my opinion, and yet they deserve better, yet we don't. It doesn't work like that. Our fans deserve so much better. And like I said, the amount of fans that constantly religiously follow our club to not get any reward or adequate reward, nah, it's not on. It's not good enough. Look, guys, I'll leave it there. But that's the point. We haven't stabilised ourselves when we really ought to have done, and teams that were below us and came up in the Premier League later than we did in recent memory have overtaken us. That's not a slur on those clubs, by the way, because they've done really, really well. But if they can do it, we should be able to do it. Anyway, guys, let's go for the Palace game on Monday night. Let's hope we can get a bit revenge on Pardew for the 4-1 defeat at the Stadium of Light in April, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, love yous and leave yous. So like, comment, subscribe, the usual stuff, and I'll see you next time.